It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Friday, August 4th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Until the End with Daniel Baker, the Wednesday Message Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? It is Friday, and I am so happy. It is the end of the week. So happy that all of us have made it till the end. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday messages, learn only from me. And of course, we had a little bit of a different title for the Wednesday message, and we will go over that in the second segment during the word study for today's podcast. Man, if you guys think about it, it's August 4th right now, but after the weekend, Monday is going to be August 7th, which means we're basically, the first week is done. The first week of August is done. I am super excited because we are plowing through this year. We're plowing through 2023. August is like basically a week done already. And interestingly, just the feeling is I'm getting more and more excited. I'm more hopeful, right? The hopeful excited. Not that I'm expecting like all the best things to happen by the end of the year. That's not the thing I'm saying. It's just I feel more hopeful about things than if you compared to last month, 2 months, 3 months ago, even 4 months ago. It's kind of like, man, we were like bracing for the worst things to happen in 2023. But now as you kind of see how the year is progressing with the trial, with the peaceful protests, all the different things happening, there is like a hopeful curiosity about what's going to happen in 2023. Like, a couple months ago, it's kind of dire, like, man, brace yourselves. Get ready for the craziest year ever. And you know what? It has been the craziest year ever. But with all the things happening now and like what else? Like we've got so many things have changed. We've gotten through the most difficult part. We've gotten more information. Forensics went through for the audio, the Netflix audio. We're getting more information about the evidence that's coming out during the trial. There's like, peaceful protests. We're excited for like 15,000 people gathering for the protests on August 15th. And I think the thing that makes things more and more hopeful and helps us to kind of calm my heart even more is just the power of the word this last month. Right, these last 3-4 messages, it is very, very clear what Sunsim's thoughts are, like how much he loves the people, even if they've kind of gone against him. This time of judgment that is happening right now, the judgment of conscience, just so people realize so they can come back, like God is like really pulling on their conscience. But Sunsim is very, very clear of, what is right and what is wrong. And the way that things have happened, because it took about 4 months for these types of messages to come out. And in the past, we are kind of just like anticipating what's Sunsim going to say? Is he going to say anything about what's happening right now? But it almost felt like he was defending what was happening, right? But it also, like when you look at how things are happening now, you get to realize a couple things. I get to realize how much Sunsim just truly, truly loves. Regardless if they're against him or for him, he is someone who kind of epitomizes how to love your enemies. Because, for a lot of us, when in March, you hear tons of stories of people who couldn't love their enemies. They're just so angry about things, right? But we're able to realize one is just how much love he has, right? And he says things at the right time. When he has full information, when he understands the things that are happening, and he also, I think one thing that we do have to recognize is there's also a time of grieving too, or like that time of shock. You know what I mean? Imagine if it's like your wife or your husband that cheats on you. There is a moment of shock. Like you cannot believe what is going on, right? And I think it helps me to, if you miniaturize it into our personal situations too, like Sunseem does in the beginning, he just sits there gathering information first. He's not going to take a side. He's supporting who he supports. Like even for me, because when I look at like Sunseem too, when all this stuff happened, I'm there for Sunseem. So I'm not going to say anything against him. I haven't heard all the information. I just sit there gathering and I keep supporting him, right? Even though I don't know the full information. And if I look at the way I am towards Sunseem, that's what Sunseem is like towards like the other people, the close people to him that betrayed, right? That he's going to wait for the full information. All he's hearing is people sending in letters here and there. He doesn't know which one is true, which one is false, or he's maybe even giving them a chance to kind of come back, right? And I think that's the same thing we should be doing is, if there's someone we trust and they betray, the first thing we shouldn't do is just all of a sudden just blow up on them. But we should be those that are trusting them because they were with us the whole time, and then gather information. And by the end of it, what happens? Then we're like, oh, so this is what's going to happen. And they're really like, they're going to die on that hill. All right. So then now I know. And then you can move forward like that. So I think it's a great way to understand how not to make bigger mistakes in the future. So that is something that I'm very, very happy and excited. And I had some good realizations about that too. So I hope you guys, that all of us are are seeing things in a more hopeful way, right? Like I said, I'm not saying that, we're expecting everything to work in our favor for this trial and everything going on. It's all going to be on our side. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, we couldn't help but be a little bit negative, like, man, what's 2023 going to be like? This is crazy. Into, wow, you know what? Things are progressing. We're starting to see more information, and I can't, I'm more hopeful and more curious about how 2023 is going to end. So I'm not sure if that makes sense to you guys, but you could write in the comments below if that's something that you guys kind of feel also, but that's how I feel. Poll question. So poll question is quite interesting. And I brought this up because there was something, I had a conversation with someone when it came to, evangelism. And it's about, this is where it came up from. It wasn't just about evangelism. It was more so about talking about the online church, right? This open online church. What should be the method for the church? Like, what is the strategy for it? And there's many strategies we can go about. It can be super open platform. All the lessons are out there in the open, and anyone who wants to join can join. They can listen to all the lessons, and they can join service right after, whatever it is, right? There's one way of doing it. And then in the online church, it shows like there'll be a preacher preaching Sunseem's message and stuff like that too. Another method is it becomes like, it's basically preaching Sunseem's message, so it gets the message out there, but the key point would be to bring people to Christ, bring people to God, right? And then the discussion is, well, aren't we supposed to make brides? And in my head, I have two things in my head, because there's this is why I brought up this poll of, are we there to make brides? Are we there to give salvation or spread the gospel? Like, what are we supposed to do, right? And when I look at it's about almost 70 people who have voted on the poll, and 42%. So about 42%. Their whole goal, their most important goal, is to make people brides. The second most important goal is to spread the gospel at 28%, and just under it, 27% is give salvation to people, and 0% is meet as many people as possible. And then there's some people that commented other things too. Now, the reason I brought this up is I think one of the things that makes it, I think the goal, like what we're looking forward to, what we're trying to do, like how we look at things and how we want to do something, or why we are doing something, the purpose that we have will change our mentality, our thoughts and actions, right? So think about evangelism right now. When we look at evangelism, we see that it's not a super efficient, effective. It's not super effective. So you're not even getting like 10% of the people to come into Providence. You're not even getting 10%. You're not even getting 5%, right? You're looking at a very, very low percentage of people that are actually coming to this history. Now, if I did this mental exercise and our whole goal is to bring brides, then we only care about people who come to Providence. We only care about people who want to listen to the word, right? And if they're not there, we kind of like don't pay attention to them. And what I'm thinking is, when I think about what the real goal is, what the real goal that Jesus had, what the real goal that Sunseam has, I think it's something that we have to rethink. Yes, spreading the gospel is important. Making brides is like the key, the top thing. But I think there's another way we have to start thinking about this, so we're not so exclusive and not so like only thinking like it's us or nothing. Because the reality is, it is not us or nothing. It's not. Right? You're like, what do you mean it's not us or nothing? You're either a bride or you're not, kind of thing. And I'm like, that's true. But when we listen to the rapture lesson, when the rapture happens, heaven isn't only just the golden city. Heaven isn't only a place just for brides. We see that heaven is a place for servants, children, and brides. There's 3 levels of them there, right? Heaven opens up all 3 levels: Old Testament, New Testament, Complete Testament. So there's a level for all 3 of those people to be there. Now, we're in the time of brides. So should our main focus should be absolutely on brides? And I would say yes and no. Like, yeah, we want to bring people into the bride history. We want them to come to the ultimate pinnacle to fulfill the purpose of creation at that level. And that's true. And I do believe that should be an innate personal goal for yourself, that I need to become a bride, and we need to find those people who are ready to be brides, which is at this point in time in history, it's not a large group. In our point in history right now, it's actually a very, very small group that is it's a small group that is getting ready to become brides at this moment in time. Of course, in the future, it's going to be more and more and more. But what about right now? Right now, we're not seeing a huge bunch of people coming into this history. And if we look at the world and we think of only brides, the problem is we throw away people that sometimes just need faith. Like, they're not in the position to be a bride yet. They're still going through their things in their life, right? And sometimes people are better off at this moment in time to be at the level of the New Testament or Old Testament. They're just, they're better off there. Now you're like, wait, you want us to take people to those levels? And the answer is, it's whether people are ready or not. The ultimate first step in faith. What's the very first step in faith? And Sunseam talked about this a long time ago. He said that the very first step in faith is believing in God. That is the number one, the first step. And he said, this is the ultimate thing that is so difficult for a lot of people. And he said, just the moment you believe in God is the same as like putting $150,000 into your bank account. That's how big that first step of faith is. It's believing in God, right? Making people believe in God, letting them know that God exists, right? Bringing them to church, letting people begin to grow their faith, even if it's not in Providence. Like, that is something that is an option for people too that may not be ready. So imagine you find someone who's ready to just start their faith, but they may not be ready to come to Providence, right? Does that mean like, oh, well, that's not our job, or ours is only for brides? I think that kind of misses out on the point, right? Because do you remember when Sunseam talked about what his biggest realization was when Jesus took him into hell? He went into hell, I think, for 3 days. Or was it 1 day? I forget how many days it was. But Sunseam said he had so much trauma for the next 3 months. It was just so terrible, all the things that he saw. But Sunseam's realization was he never wants anyone to go there. And this is not just about brides. It's about making sure that people don't go to hell. And this is something that I'm thinking about a lot is, should it just be about bringing people as brides? And the answer is no, I don't think so. I think our main goal is the same goal that God has. Because think about this. Is it okay then that someone goes to hell because they don't come to Providence? Oh, yeah. Let them deal with themselves. Let the Christians deal with them, or whatever it is, right? No, because Christians go to heaven too. Everyone who believes in Jesus, everyone who believes in God, right? Those believes in God and the one that God has sent is going to have a chance to go to heaven, right? And if you think of that realization that Sunseem has, it's not like he treats people terribly or throws people away, but he is going to turn people to Christ, right? Because he's on Jesus' side too. And like, even for me, one of the things that I remember when I was growing up in Providence is I was trying my best to evangelize my parents. But they saw all the slander, they saw all the different things. So they had some type of, but they still trust me, they love me. They don't say anything against me being in Providence at all. So they're very, very westernized. Like, yeah, we trust you kind of thing, right? But they are like elders and elders in their church. And they have good faith. My dad's father, my grandfather was a pastor of the church where both my mom and dad met and got married, right? And one of the things that Sunseem says, if you push something too much and if you pick the fruit too early when it comes to bringing people into Providence, you can actually ruin all their faith. They'll lose their faith altogether. Sometimes it's best for some people, if they're already doing super well, to leave them there. Because what is the ultimate goal is to make sure no one goes to hell, right? And this is why we're searching for those who are ready for this history. But the reality is, it's like 95 to 99% of the people are not coming. Isn't that crazy? Because remember, we listened to the statistics maybe about 10, 15 years ago, and the average statistic is 1 in 100 come to Providence. So it's pretty crazy. So out of 100 people you meet, 10 will start learning the word, and of the 10, 1 will pass. So it's 1 in 100. So if you think about it in that case, that means that of the 100 people you meet, 99 are not going to come, right? But truthfully speaking, 90 of those 100 are not even going to study the word. So it's kind of like they're not even ready for faith. But you're going to meet about 10 people, and 9 out of the 10 are interested in faith, but they're not ready to come to Providence. You know what I mean? So are we going to just throw away those 9 people? Or are we going to be those, that love people and just make sure that no one goes to hell, right? And like for me too it's like, yeah, it's something that we do. That's why this subject did come up, is if we make an online church, would it be wrong to make an online church to at least bring people to faith, to believe in Jesus, to believe in Christ, bring in the words? Because, our words is from Jesus, right? It's from Jesus, and it's better for them to learn the word, and it'll prepare them, make them ready for the future to come in this history too, right? So there's a lot of different things that did come into questioning, like what should we do for now at this situation, circumstance in Providence right now? Are we ready to just boom, make an open online platform for anyone in the world to come, right? Are we ready to take care of that type of thing? Or is it better to have it first, to at least bring people to faith? And that's why this came up. And I think one of the things we do need to transition our mindset into is, I don't think Sunseem's sitting there like saying that, there's only one way, so then everyone else is going to hell. No, he doesn't say that. After going to hell, he's like, I hope that no one goes to hell. And we have to make sure that, I think that we shouldn't be too exclusionary. Like I do want to visit my friends' churches. Not saying that, I'm betraying. No, not at all. Right? Because even for me, if there's some people that are not ready, I want to have, I got my buddies and friends that I can refer them to. It's like, you know what? There's this really, really good church that I visit every once in a while. You should go check that place. Why? Because they're not ready for Providence, but I'm not going to sit there. I don't want to throw people away when all they need is faith at that moment in time. So let me give you another example. Another example that Sunseem brought up too was, Sunseem brought up remember, people are asking, well, why the heck did Jesus heal people and stuff? Like, what's the point? Why did he heal them? And Sunseem was like, because if you're in a very extreme situation, like extreme poverty or extreme disease, you can't come into faith because it's too much on your mind. And that's why Jesus had to solve their problems first before putting the gospel into them. So if they're suffering from disease, heal the disease and then put the gospel into them too, right? So there are some people in life that we meet that may not be ready right away. They need to first get themselves into solving their issues, their finances, their health and stuff like that too, before anything else, right? And then the gospel can come into them. And a lot of times our churches may be too small or unequipped to get those people involved or ready, right? And that's something that I really think about that to myself, is like, yeah, actually the question is, should my mindset change? Should it just be one-sided, right? It's bride or nothing. Where that's not the case in history, where if it's bride or nothing, then only brides go to heaven. But that's not the case, because brides, children, and servants go, right? So that is something that I was thinking about. And of course, I do think the thing that God really wants is the fulfillment of the purpose of creation at the highest level, right? At the very, very highest level. But if that is not possible, since people have free will, then I think we just want to make sure that we have that same shimjung as God, is not a single person goes to hell. I think God will be so happy even if only one person becomes a bride, but the rest of the world doesn't go to hell. I think God would be much, much happier than 10 brides or 1,000 brides, and then like 7.99 billion people going to hell. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that I have been thinking about because of this conversation about the online church. And guys, the online church, I'm going to be having a discussion with IMD next week about this online church. And there are some people who are already asking to be involved or want to help out with it too. So that is something that we are going to be working on. And it's not going to be like a 6-month project. It's probably going to be like a 2-year project that has phases involved, that we need to get the right phases down so that we can have a proper foundation and setting for that online church to actually happen. And knowing and discussing with Sunsi about what would be the goal of the online church too. Right? Like, I'll give you some idea of like some of the online churches out there are like 70, like in America, the top 3 online churches, the top church has 70,000 people at that online church. They have their own app, the phone app, everything else. Then the second largest is something like 49,000, and then 40,000, 39,000. Like, these are gigantic churches that you couldn't even put into a single building in America, right? Because the largest building that for a regular church is, I believe it's like 46,000 people, and that's Lakewood Church from Joel Osteen over there in Houston, Texas. And their church can only fit, I believe, like 20,000 at a time. So you couldn't even have it all together. You have to have multiple services in a day, right, on the Sundays, which is, so I think this online church is something for the future we do have to really, really think about, but we have to plan it really well, and we can't just go out and make it like this, right? So that is something that some planning that's going to go into it. And we are going to start the Discord for the lecturers starting next week. So applications will come out for lecturers who want to join it, okay? So yeah, that's one of the things that I have been thinking about when it comes to the poll question, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it too, now that you know why I was thinking about it and why I put that poll out. So I think for those of you guys out there, there's been this Barbie talk for 2 weeks, and I think I may end up going watch it. I think I might. Maybe not at the theaters, but I'll wait for it to stream or whatever it is. But I think I'm gonna go watch it because 2 things happened. Okay, number one is Kiera introduced me to a YouTube video of Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire, and I like Michael Knowles, and Michael Knowles talks about why he really, really liked the Barbie movie. So there's number one. So I was like, oh, wow. So there's someone in the world who I would expect not to like it, but does like it. And so there's one thing. And the second thing that happened was, finally a male member, as Abraham, wrote in the comment section about Barbie actually being funny in the last hour, because it was more towards the guys, right? It was a plot for the guys kind of thing. And it was really, really interesting because he said that, the first part of it is mainly for girls. So he was like, meh, it wasn't that good. But he said the last hour was the plot for the guys. And he said it was hilarious, right? So for me, it's like, well, I like fun movies. I do. I really like fun movies. I want to laugh. I've seen some clips online right now, and some of them was pretty funny. So I was like, oh, that looks pretty funny. So I'm kind of like, my thoughts are, I think I'm going to dress up like Oppenheimer and go watch Barbie. That's what I think I'm going to do. I'm not going to wear pink. I'm going to dress up like Oppenheimer, go watch Barbie, sleep for the first couple of minutes, first bits until the last hour of the movie where it's really, really funny kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. It's kind of a joke too, but yeah, I think I'm going to go watch it. Right? I think I want to go watch it just to see what it's like. But let's see. But I've already got 2 signs. One respected YouTuber, conservative, but really enjoyed the Barbie movie. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then on top of it, the second was a member from Hawaii, Abraham. He wrote that he watched it, he enjoyed it. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's time to go watch Barbie. Yeah, and then talk about it on Man Cave. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna watch Oppenheimer and then talk about it on Man Cave. I think that's what's gonna happen. Yeah. So like I said, guys, dress like Oppenheimer and go watch Barbie. Yesterday, I did my first real lecture. So I told you guys on Monday that I did a Q&A for someone who just finished 9 times half a times, and I did the first half of the history lesson. Super enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed lecturing again. It was awkward at the beginning, to be honest. It was kind of awkward because for the last 3.5 years, I'm more used to the podcast Q&A style, right? Rather than an actual formulated lecture. And it's crazy because the first lecture I come back on is history. And there is so much information. Like those of you guys who haven't heard the history lesson, go ahead, check it out on my my Patreon. The history lesson's there. It's in 2 parts. Ton of information about world history and how world history and biblical history coincide and how they converge. And for me, like my favorite part of the history lesson is the 400-year period between Malachi and Jesus. It's got such rich history in it. I love it. Talks about Alexander the Great, the Hellenization of the empire, the Greek periods, the Roman periods with the Caesars, how things became until Jesus and why the situation was the way it was. And for me, I'm just like, oh, I love it. Like personally, I love listening to history because it gives you a hint of what has happened, why things are happening today. History shapes us. History allows us to. That's why Oppenheimer is such a great film. It shows us, wow, those decisions have formed the way the world is today, and why there's like 20,000 nuclear warheads between America and Russia, kind of thing, right? So, let me give you an interesting example of how history has shaped even like Providence, right? Like world history. So, I don't know much about German Providence right now because I haven't been there in like over a decade. But when I was growing up and I was running with the German members from 2005, right? And 2005 and onwards. And there was one thing that was quite shocking to see when it came to the German members is Sunsi made them all pastors. Like every single one of them was a pastor. And I was like, that's so crazy, right? Literally every person was a pastor. They got the title from Sunsi. And when you go to the church, there wasn't a single member. There wasn't a single leader there. It was everyone discussed, everyone had the same amount of time to talk. It was like kind of like that. There's no singular leader. And I was so curious. And kind of envious at the same time because I was a pre-pastor, and one of my goals was to become a pastor, like to work really hard in this history and get the pastor title. So I was kind of like envious, but I was wondering like, why is everyone a pastor here? So I talked to one of the German members way back then. So like I said, is back then, I don't know about now. And they were very open and honest about it. And they said it was because of German history. In German history, we know about the history of World War II, right? With Hitler. And what happened was the Germans put all their faith into this one leader, and they paid the price for it. And that's why they're very sensitive to having one person who is leading. Right? And that's why it was, Sunsim saw the culture and the reason why people were thinking a certain way, that everyone was basically equal as a leader, and they discussed and did things together, right? And it was because of their history. So I was like, that was really interesting. But what made it even more interesting is their views on the church that I was leading, and because they're sensitive to this one strong leader, they thought that it wasn't a good thing that the church that I was leading they thought they were way too focused on me. You know what I mean? Because they're already sensitive to that type of thing where you can't put all your trust into one leader, they felt like that, I think they're way too focused on Sky kind of thing, right? And because of their history, there is this sensitivity that they have to the things that they went through. Now, like I said, I don't know about now, and if there are any Germans out there, you guys can write about it and say, right now it's not quite like that. kind of thing. And I understand, but from 2005 when I was there, we had those things going. 2005 to 2007 was when I was there working in Europe for 2 years. And there were those conversations with me from some of the leaders in Germany, but they were very honest with me saying, we are sensitive to it because of this and this and this. Yeah. So that's why I'm very, very much into history, and I like to see, this makes sense, and this is why they're kind of like this. So yeah. So I had a very good time teaching again. I will be teaching again on Saturday. Oh, cool thing about this weekend I just found out is it's a long weekend in Vancouver. It's a BC Day. Our province has a holiday, and everyone has Monday off, except for me, because it doesn't really affect me because I don't have holidays from this podcast, right? And I'm not complaining. I'm totally not complaining. Like, I got to do this podcast. For me, I enjoy it. This is something that keeps me going, keeps me my mind. And my heart is just buzzing, always thinking about the word and always thinking about what I talk about next on the podcast and such. So it's something I'm not really affected by, and I'm not complaining about either. But I do think in the future, eventually, I am going to need some holidays. You know what I mean? I am going to need a holiday from this podcast every once in a while. And it's not that there's not going to be a podcast, but since I was thinking about this more, I do know that I have to take into consideration that I should have someone who is just as talkative as me, who can kind of like fill in every once in a while. And I think that person, like, honestly, I think the person that I can see from all the segments that they've done, I think Eddie, he talks a lot too, and he likes to talk, and he's very insightful with his thoughts. I think he is someone that every once in a while can help me out if I need to go on vacation or something like that, or something emergency pops up. And I think that's something that I will talk to him about. Yeah, I haven't talked about it yet, and I'm saying it in the open right now, so he might be listening to this like, what? Sorry, Eddie. I'm not saying that you are going to be, but I definitely think you have the chops to do it. Okay. Either way, so that is the first segment for today. Hope it's something that you guys all enjoyed. I am enjoying this podcast as usual, but it is a wonderful Friday. Thank God it is Friday. So let's get into our first break of the day.
We believe in the same God, but we are on different levels.
Put your hands in the sky if you feel alive. All the stories that we made, just you and I. Never losing all the passion. All this love is my obsession. Oh my gosh, this feeling got me heat stroke. His love like a billion pots about to heat though. I ain't never breaking from this bond, cause you and I are only one.
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with?
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with? Life. Don't worry about it, then you know it's only some in life. We sing about memory stories that we share. We'll fall deeper in love as we stop and just stare. My eyes only on you, they sparkle with love. Don't forget my charm too. There will never be another. Live this life only for you. I give you this promise that I will hold true.
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with?
If you ain't living with the Lord, then who you with?
Who you with?
We are on different levels.
All right, so let's get into today's word study. And yes, this is the last word study of the week, and every single Friday we do have the Wednesday message word study. So this week's Wednesday message, different title. Different title, but the same. It's I learned correctly from Jesus and teach. So learn from me. And then also a new scripture came in, which is about the rapture in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, 17. And it was a very, very healthy review on the rapture and such and what we are teaching right now. And it reminds us of why this history is so great and why the words are so great too. So this week is all about learning, right? And I don't know if you guys have caught on, but we get this message about learning, or at least this key point comes up at least 10 to 15 times a year, right? We need to keep learning. And, the only way to learn is to learn from the one that God has sent. But I think one of the good points that was made during the introduction of this week's message was about what learning does to our faith. The more we learn, the deeper our roots of faith go into the foundation of Christ, right? So, why do we need these deep roots? Well, just look at what happened this year, right? When the hardships, when the tribulations come, when there's attacks against us, we need those deep roots so when the windstorms and the rains come, none of the trees will be uprooted. And this is one of the analogies that Sunsteam gave last year before 2023 came in. I believe it was like their October or November. Sunsteam says, next year the windstorms and the rains are going to be so harsh. Those whose roots are not deep enough will be uprooted, and the trees will be uprooted, right? And that has to do with how well did we learn. And I think this is one of the questions I had with another member. And they're like, I don't understand how someone who's been in Providence for like this long, for like 20 years or 25 years, can just leave because of the situation. Don't you think that's kind of weird? And I'd be like, no, it's not weird at all. Because faith is not based on the history. Faith is not based on what you've done in the past. Faith is based on what is happening right now. You know what I mean? It's almost like having a car. If you have a car, the health of your car is not based on how you treated your car last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's about how well do you maintain your car right now. So if you don't maintain your car right now at this moment, it doesn't matter how well you took care of it 10 years ago. If it's not maintained now, the car will break down and you have no reason to be shocked by it, right? We just don't, right? And that's what faith is. Faith is not a history thing. Faith is a now thing. How is your faith right now? How is your prayer right now? How are your thoughts, your mentality, your perception right now? And that's what makes the biggest difference. Another thing that I remember what Sunsteam said is he's like, if you think about human beings, we should. Oh, excuse me 1 second. I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. One thing Sunsteam said is, you don't see people for over 90% of their life. Like imagine if you see someone every day, how long do you see someone for? Well, they came to church at pre-dawn, or we saw them on Zoom at pre-dawn for about an hour. So that's an hour of 24 hours, 60 minutes, that's it. And you weren't even really talking to them. So could you say that you know what's going on for the remaining 23 hours of their life, what they're doing, what their thoughts are? You don't. The hard part for us is we kind of only see people in church when they're at their best, trying to be their best. They're trying to change their thoughts, but we have no idea what's happening in like 93% of their life. We have no idea. We have no idea what they're doing, what's happening to them in their life. And that's why the reason why we're shocked is because we only see that one side of them, but we really don't know what their life is like. And this is why sometimes if you're like someone who's really spiritual, you're not going to be surprised. Because spiritually, you see their clothes. You see what they're thinking, what their actions are like through their life. And this is one of the reasons why if faith is about your life right now, then this is why we need to learn more. Yes, do you have the basics down? You could have had them down for the past 20 years, and then for the last 3-4 years, you might not have it down as much, like going to pre-dawn and doing all the other things. But we're urged to learn even more clearly each and every day, each and every week, right? And I hope that's something that all of us can really get our thoughts and our hearts to really kind of get in our heads. It's not about all the things you did in the past. Like for me is one of the things when I look at myself, when I was realizing more deeply about why people who could be in Providence for 30, like even my good buddy, he's been in Providence for way longer than me, like 4 or 5 years. And he left too at the very beginning, all the way back in January, or probably even earlier than that. And people are going to ask, oh, how can that happen? And the answer is, it's not about what they did in the past. It's not about them making testimonies of what God did for them in the past. Because one thing Sunseam says is, this sounds funny, but the thoughts of people before they go to the bathroom and after are different. And what does that mean? Like someone is desperate to go to the bathroom. They're like, oh, please let me in. I'll do anything for you. Please, I'll do this. Please, God, please let me get to cut in line into the bathroom, please. And then when you let them in front of you, they said they're going to treat you well. But after they get out, they're completely different, right? That problem is solved. And now they don't do the things they said they're going to do for you kind of thing, right? People's hearts change. Right? And what have they been doing? The bigger question, what have they been doing for the last couple of years? And that plays a huge role, right? And that's something that we do have to think about is people need to learn constantly. It's what is your faith right now? I think the biggest example we have is John the Baptist. Like what miracle did he see? He baptized Jesus. A dove from heaven descends upon Jesus. A dove from heaven descends upon Jesus. And then what happens? He hears the voice of God saying, "This is my son." And that's John chapter 1, verse 34, where John is like, "I confess, I have seen. He is the Son of God." Like he is so sure. But by the time we get to Matthew chapter 11, we hear like John the Baptist saying, "Are you really the one?" He doubts by that time. Even John the Baptist is a sure sign of how people can change very, very quickly. It's not about what you've done in the past. What are you doing now? Right? And that's why for me that's why I'm thinking about new projects, online churches, these types of things is because I can't talk about my past. Oh, you know what I did in the past? Dude, that's like 10 years ago. You know what I mean? I'm like, 10 years ago, what does it matter? Right? What matters is, what am I doing for my faith right now? What am I doing for God right now? And I'm doing the podcast, right? Yeah, and I think this is going to be much, much bigger in the future, right? As more and more people come, it's going to be something that's going to extend a lot more ears as the English ministry around the world begins to grow more and more. But also on top of that, we're like, yeah, we need some more stuff. While most of the leaders are busy head leading in headquarters, IMD, department leaders and stuff like that, I have the time and I have a certain skill set that I can help with something that is much more forward thinking of what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 5 years. What are the tools that we're going to need, right? So that is something that I am thinking about a lot. And that's why 4-phase, we're looking into doing a 4-phase project that eventually leads to an online church over the next 2 years, right? It needs time and it needs a lot of effort too, all right? So that is kind of what we are going over right now. So I hope it's something that a lot of us will really get our hearts and minds to really think about for the future, okay? So I think that's something that we have to be thinking about, right? Get the deeper roots in there. What are we doing now? That is the important part. Then it goes into the message. And I think one of the key points that we kind of see, we see is basically if the Spirit comes, people can't listen. People can't see or even hear it. Like even in your lifetime, how many people have seen Jesus in a year? And usually the number is 0. Like literally see Jesus and Jesus is talking to you and giving you a message. It's usually 0. The spirits that return cannot talk to the bodies. It's very, very, very rare. And one of the great points was, well, what about Elijah and Moses? It was in Matthew chapter 15 or 16, Matthew 17, the transfiguration. Like if you think about that story, if Elijah and Moses, they're in spiritual form, if they could actually talk to bodies, don't you think that they would, like Elijah and Moses would be straight up going to the Pharisees, Sadducees, like, hey, dudes, you gotta follow this guy kind of thing. And they were not, it's not like the Pharisees, Sadducees weren't spiritual. You just can't do it in spirit, right? And if we see, just as Elijah and Moses could not aid Jesus, what's the best they can do is have a discussion with Jesus, but they couldn't physically do anything on this earth. Even Elijah couldn't physically do it. He was helping and aiding John the Baptist, who eventually rejected Jesus. And that helps us to understand even right now that as Jesus returns in spirit in the time of the Lord's second coming, he needs a body, right? And one of the points I thought that was very powerful is if you want to become an extension of God's body, if you want to become an extension of Jesus, you got to learn more. Learn more, understand Jesus' heart, his shimjung through the person that he sent. And if we can become people that are thinking and acting like Christ, we center on Christ, then we can be an extension of his body. We can be an extension. And all the stuff we're going to learn through the amazing miracles, the signs, the events, all these things that happen, we have to continuously be learning about them so that we can become an extension of Jesus's body. What does that mean? It basically means that we can be those that will go out and put ourselves as the body of Christ as one of the limbs. God is the head. Jesus is the head, the man of mission is the head, and we are the body parts doing our our individual parts. Kind of like me talking about starting an online church for the future, right? So that is something that I do believe we have to understand very, very carefully. And let me go into this week's, the Wednesday message scripture of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16 to 17 about the rapture and the dead in Christ will rise first. And we all know, and we're reviewing over, like the people who died believing in God in the Old Testament time, like the Noahs, the Abrahams, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Daniel, Ezekiel, all these kings and prophets, David, Solomon. They should have been revived, but were they revived physically or spiritually? Well, we didn't see anyone coming out of their graves. It was definitely a spiritual occurrence that happened at that time, right? Jesus didn't resurrect a single person physically. Not a single body was brought back to life and lived forever, right? We could say Lazarus, but eventually he died. So when we're looking at this, we're like, oh, what does it really mean? We need to understand very, very correctly that the rapture is not about the dead body. The resurrection is not about dead physical bodies being brought back to life. It's about the spirit. It's about listening to the words of God, coming out of the domain of death in our spirit, meaning it is understanding the words of God, believing in the one that he has sent, and bringing our spirits into the level of the New Testament or into the complete Testament time. The people in death, the people in sin, right? Why is it so important? Like, why is the key thing about believing the one that God has sent? Because that is how we get our sins forgiven, right? Only through Christ are our sins forgiven. And that's why people who are in sin, which there is not a single person in this world that has not sinned, they are living in sin. But when we come to Christ, what happens? When we are brought into this history, then we resurrect into the new history. We have someone who died on our behalf, someone who died for our sins. And this is where the spiritual resurrection comes in. But we do know that there is a bodily resurrection, but it's not so much like someone literally coming back from death to life, but is our actions of death, right? What's an actions of death? Someone who lies, someone who cheats, someone who steals, someone who murders, someone who hates, someone who does the things that are wickedness, the things that we consider sin. Those are the body that is in sin, which is in death. But those who come to this history realize, understand the words clearly, and then put the words into action, their bodies resurrect by taking spiritual action, the actions of righteousness, right? So when we look at that, it's like, yeah, it's very, very clear. It's something we've learned many, many times. Right? And I hope it's something that we will be able to continue to keep in our hearts and our minds. Yeah, we could know the basics, but sometimes we just forget. If you're not listening, if you're not teaching or understanding these things, what happens is we eventually, forget these things, or we don't realize the impact of it. Like, even for me, listening to this is very impactful because I haven't been teaching in a long time. Like Rapture, I haven't taught in years, right? But when I was teaching, I'm going to be super honest with you, because I'm teaching it every single day, I knew it. inside and out because I was teaching it all the time. And that's why sometimes for me it was a little bit boring. Like, yeah, I know this. Oh, I know this. I know this. Oh, I know this kind of thing. We all know those things. But when we stop learning, when we're not teaching, which is like 90-something% of the people in the church are not lecturing every day, we need to be reminded of it. We really, really do. Right? We need to be reminded that Jesus comes back in spirit. We need to be reminded that he needs a body. We need to be reminded that we need to believe and follow the one that is the body, the man of mission, the body of Jesus. And that salvation history is only going to be carried out through that person. We need to be reminded, right, that we cannot resurrect in our bodies. We need to be reminded that the rest of all of the faith, in like the former faith and the former faith, all believe in a bodily resurrection. That's how different our history is. We need to be reminded, right? If we're not reminded, we kind of fall back into this complacency, like, oh, you forget about how valuable and important it is, right? So, in every time period, the body came on behalf of the Spirit. Moses came on behalf of God. Jesus came on behalf of God, right? And the man of mission today comes on behalf of Jesus. So I hope that, what's that word, to singe? No, to like burn it into our hearts, right? What this message is saying, and keep reminding ourselves. So, for another big point that I like from the Wednesday message. Where is this point? I really wanted to. Yeah. So Jesus comes for the Lord's second coming, and his Spirit comes to fulfill something. Like there's a purpose that he has. But that purpose for 1,000 years will be carried out for 100 years with the man of mission, with his body, and then for the rest of the 1,000 years with the Savior, right? In spirit, carrying out the 1,000-year wedding banquet history. Right? And we have to realize, because God is so focused on this new history, God is going to be with the new history and not the old history, right? He's going to be vouching for the new history. Just like when Jesus came, he's vouching for Jesus, not for the Old Testament, because that time is past. He wants everyone to move on, right? And we have to understand this too is, when the new history comes, the new history has come right now, he's vouching for us right now over all the other histories because he wants everyone to move into this history. That only makes sense. He's not saying he abandons everyone else. He's not going to abandon the old history, right? He's not going to abandon the Old Testament, but he is going to set precedent for the complete testament over other histories too. And this is why we have to understand this will help us to understand how convicted we should be in this history, that God is going to be on our side over any other side. And it'll help us to take action more strongly and correctly. So I hope it's something that we'll be like, if God's going to be vouching for us over anyone else, how much more convicted should we be? How much more should our actions be stronger? So, another part I like too is when the point made was the problems of the old religion are solved with the new religion or the new history. The old history problems are solved with the new history. For instance, Jesus, started history in 1978, but one of the biggest problems of the old history was the fight between the Catholics and Protestants for 482 years, right? And in 1999, that problem was solved. Right? It was solved. And that old problem, the problem of the old history, was solved by the new history. So for me, there's a lot of things that we look at and we say, that makes a lot more sense. Right? Where's another good point that I was looking at? It was about judgment. So we're going into the point now that it becomes even more and more clear of God's thoughts on what has happened with the spiritual Oppenheimer, with all the people that are betrayed or turned their backs and whatever it is, right? So there is that standard person for each time period, and that standard person will form a cloud of witnesses, right? But what happens is the Holy Trinity, both God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus, will burn up the trash and filth first with the judgment of the flood, which is the judgment of conscience, right? So we're like, isn't that kind of harsh to, you're calling people trash and filth? But I like how it was spoken of as in the trash in our hearts, the trash in our bodies, the trash in our actions. And I think that is something that is very, very clear that we need to help people. Like if someone just looks at those two sentences, they can misconstrue and say, "Oh, look at what Sunseam teaches that God thinks of people like trash and he's going to get rid of them like filth." And the answer is no. What he's talking about is the trash in your heart, your body, and your actions. God wants every single person to be saved and not a single person to go to hell. Whether it's an individual, a family, a nation, the world, he doesn't want a single person to go to hell. But he's got to get rid of the trash in our hearts, bodies, and actions first. Because that's the thing that's going to send someone to hell. Right? Remember, it's not about who can kill the body. It's about who kills the spirit. But the one thing that was stated here is, in the end, God will not allow betrayers to remain forever. They can't. It goes against God's law. In the end, if people don't clean up the trash in their hearts, the trash in their bodies, the trash in their actions, there's no choice but for God to completely clean it up. Right? When you go to the spiritual world, you can't get out of the actions and the things that you've done. Right? And I hope that everyone realizes how blessed we are to be at this time, that while we are living, we are with the man of mission who is alive at this time. And this is the greatest and ultimate chance for us. If you wait until you die, it is thousands of times harder for you to change and come to this history. But when you do it in your body, this is when you can do it quickly and fast. So value this time you have right now. Value this time in your body. Where's another good point that I was looking at? There was just a lot of different things I wanted to take out, but I wanted to get to some of the important ones for me. Yeah, so also another point when it comes to the time of judgment, he says, God always wipes out and cleans up whatever that is not God's will. And the point he made is, if you don't center on the one that is sent, which is referring to people centering on someone else instead of the man of mission. Right? There's only one center. We've known this since the beginning. So for me, it baffles me why people are all of a sudden centering on someone else. It makes no sense to me. But that's what happens. Right? That's what happens. And I hope that we will understand is the great analogy was it's like a tent without a center pole. Without the man of mission, everything falls down. It'll collapse. It's not about you trying to start your own history, right? Don't start your own history. Anything without the man of mission is going to crumble. And that's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. I'm not even going to, I don't know the full situation of what's happening on the other side, but it's guaranteed to crumble. If the person that was sent is not there, it is guaranteed to crumble. Guaranteed. Right? So I hope that we'll be those that listen only to the one that God has sent, following Jesus, following the person that he has sent and no one else. And, I like how Sunseam brought up the two main reasons why people don't follow Jesus anymore, don't follow the man of mission. And he said two reasons. Number one is for circumstances, like certain circumstances come up, and the second reason is for tribulation. And he says, don't follow other people just because of the circumstance. Just because there's tribulation. Because if you start following someone else because of those two reasons, then Jesus will cut you off. Right? That's like, imagine having a best friend that stops being your best friend because of a situation that came up and no one likes you anymore, or because there's a big tribulation in their life, they no longer want to hang out with you. Like, you would kind of be like, well, I'm not going to be best friends with you anymore if you're not going to be with me through the thick and thin. So I hope it's something that we really, really get our hearts to think about also is don't turn your backs for those reasons. The whole reason why Providence is here, and Sunseam just wants people to be united with Jesus, to love, to take action just like Jesus, to become Christ-like. And I hope that we will have that mentality and mindset so that we can make history happen in this way too. All right? So there it is, guys. That is the word study on the Wednesday message for today. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that. If you have anything comments you want to add or just comment about, go ahead and put in the comments below. We'd love to hear that too. All right. So let's get into the the second break of the day. Okay, so let's get into the final segment for today and for the entire week. And every Friday we do have Until the End Mental Health Podcast with Daniel Baker over there in Korea. Just some big news. He actually just turned 20, I believe. So big, happy belated birthday. I believe it was yesterday or the day before, August 2nd, I believe, right? So those guys, if you can, go ahead, comment below and just wish Daniel a happy birthday. He's doing an amazing job with these podcasts, all right? So this is it, guys. Last segment of today and for the entire week. Everyone, please welcome all the way over there in Korea. This is Daniel Baker with Until the End.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Do It Until the End podcast. Now, this week has been an amazing week over in Korea on my end because as I'll talk about today, today I'm going to do a short testimony about turning 20, something that everyone has to do, but it's such a massive crossing point within their lives. And I also realized that this is the case for myself, and I'll talk about why this is the case. And Korea is going through some major changes even within Providence, which is very interesting. There's a lot of protests, there's a lot of people that, who were thought to be on the same side, who are God's slowly revealing what people have done. It's interesting because, God is making everyone in Providence repent so that we don't get judged, right? So, especially in Korea, there's been a lot of judgment. It's like every day 15 people die, or some number die from from like heat stroke, right? And that's one part of the judgment, in my opinion. And you can see that people in Providence too are getting judged because people's actions are getting revealed to the public. And yeah, so I truly believe that everyone needs to pray about that this whole Korea situation, because it's very close to Sun's name, and it's very good that we're close to Sun's name, because we're able to. I truly believe that if we work together, we're able to make some major changes within this whole situation, because it's been very lopsided in one way for a while now, and it's getting kind of old. So kind of need to work hard and make sure that we can protect Sun's name. So today I'll do a short testimony about turning 20. So yeah, my birthday was on August 2nd, on Wednesday, and it's been a very crazy 1 year. It's been exactly 1 year and 1 month since I came to the countryside over in the Warmdong area to pretty much go full time. And so for this year's birthday, I was very surprised because I got the most gifts from other people. The coupon system is so amazing, where you can buy something for someone else, and if they just put in their address, the Kakao Talk will ship it to you. So I got like 6 or 7 massive, amazing coupons where I'm going to be able to use in the future. And it made me realize that in life, the more people you affect, the more God and the universe and other people will give and be generous to you. This is the case for money, for fame, for birthday presents. And in the past, I made the mistake of not caring too much. But it's very interesting where you can see how well you're doing in a community, and if whenever something bad happens to you or something good, like a birthday comes around, how much people comes over and helps you or gives you support. And I could see like in the past, like pre-COVID even, where I didn't care about my relationships, and no one really cared. And I've been making some major changes because within the last year, it's been like one of the busiest years of my life. Not only running for Providence, but also meeting new people, making new relationships, and making new and developing new hobbies. And it's just been an absolute blast. And I really want to thank the Trinity for really making sure that I develop really good relationships, because money can come and go. However, relationships that you have with your friends, Providence, you can meet people 20 years from now and you can still have the same, we're Providence people, we have the same simjang, we believe in Sanzim, haven't seen you in 20 years, but we're going to enjoy the time we have right now. Now, during the day where it was actually my birthday, not all of my family was here, but it was very memorable this birthday because the SS took care of me for one day. Well, it felt like an ordinary day, to be perfectly honest. I was a little bit sad about, like, within the day I was very sad. Not very, but kind of sad, because it was an ordinary day. I had work, morning service. Nothing felt too special, except for after Wednesday service, which the SS surprised me and they bought me a cake. And it was very crazy because, I was just giving like announcements and making sure that the SS know what kind of programs there are within the week. And I was just, I was talking, and, as I was finishing, they just turned off the lights, and I was like, really? I didn't get a cake today, so it was very hard to not tear up, because I really felt the Trinity and the SS's love, through this surprise. And something that I really am really proud of before my birthday was something that I made, the determinations I made for the next 5-10 years of my life. Now, I realize that it would not be wise to go into my 20s without a direct goal or purpose. I understand the dangers of having no purpose because I've been through it during the COVID years and just even sometimes in high school. I will not make this mistake because I realize that it's terrible for my mental health, especially. Having no goal or purpose is difficult for your mental health. And, having this determination to not make this mistake again, I really made I feel like it's a wise goal and something that I can work on for the next 5 years. Now, the goal is for the next 5 years, I will invest heavily into myself to develop myself into a deep and rich person. Now, deep and rich, that's something that, to be honest, 20-year-olds do not have. A lot of 20-year-olds are still finding themselves, still trying to find their footing in life inside the world. And I realize that. However, for the next 5 years, developing myself and investing heavily, whatever it takes to develop myself physically, spiritually, mentally, to become that deep and rich person. I kind of made the determination to not hold back in these situations. Now, how do I get this goal? Because getting this goal is kind of the hard part, right? So the last days of my teens, I had a prayer and I was constantly asking the Trinity. I was asking the Trinity one thing. What path should I take in the next 5 years? That's something I asked. And how do I develop myself to prepare myself for marriage and other obstacles? I'm not saying marriage is an obstacle, but other obstacles in life. I asked this and I prayed about this. And through a re-education lecture, I was introduced to a sensing proverb that went like this. I'm paraphrasing, so please understand. So the proverb went like this: if you make and develop your environment, it will be fresh and new for a while. However, if you make and develop yourself, you can use it for as long as you live. This proverb was given during the re-education lecture to the SS, and it was very interesting because that lecture was about how to become closer to God, how to become really close to God. And one of the amazing things within that lecture was to get close to God, you really need to give your attention. You need to make sure that you're really getting to know, or the act of getting to know God and the Trinity is very important to become really close to the Trinity. So, your environment, if you make your environment, you might feel amazing for next 3-4 days. Like if you have a brand new chair, which is just amazing, you use it for a week. This chair is amazing. I can feel like I can work here for hours. However, that feeling will go away. However, what will not go away is if you develop yourself, if you make good skills, you can use this for the rest of your life. I can say this because I played volleyball for 1 year in Gwangmyeong, and that really helped me develop and play volleyball even 2-3 years later, where just randomly I got the chance to play volleyball, and God gave me this chance, and I was able to develop pretty rapidly. So if you develop yourself, you can use it forever. You can use it while you're here on earth. But also the interesting thing is, like, one of your, if let's say if one of your goals is, playing with the Trinity, I want to play soccer with the Trinity in the Golden City of Heaven after I live my life. However, you don't play soccer when you're, on this earth, and you're not particularly good at it, and you don't develop yourself. What will happen is, do you really think your spirit is just going to be amazing at soccer? It's very important that we develop important skills here on the earth so we can use it also in the Golden City. Yeah, it's very important, because if we make ourselves once, if we develop this skill once in our life very early on, we can use it forever. Public speaking or whatever skill you feel the worst at, or whatever skill you have a lot of trauma, or I've seen people that have some massive public speaking trauma where it's very difficult for them to even go up on a stage. However, if they develop the skill of public speaking, then it's something that they can enjoy and do on command within their whole life. And that's something that I'm able to do, at least for English, right? For Korean, I need to work a little bit more, develop my skills in that area. But at least for English, public speaking is pretty fun. So yeah, we gotta develop ourselves 100%. That's my goal for 5 years. Intensely improving myself. This also means 100% putting all of my effort, 100% investing in myself, both financially, into what I need to develop. And yeah, so that's there's a lot of people that already congratulated me on my birthday. I want to thank everyone who already did, and I really want to thank everyone who listened on this podcast segment today. I truly thank you for listening. To everyone who wants to go until the end with the Lord, let's walk this path together. Bye-bye.
And thank you so much, Daniel, for another wonderful episode of Until the End, and great updates that you've given to us too. A lot of things we need to really pray about. I hope you guys are really, really praying a lot during the 70-day prayer condition, and that we can pray for the situation not only here, but also in Korea too. All right. So there it is, guys. This is the end of this week's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Enjoy your weekend. Have an awesome Sunday service. And we'll see you guys again on Monday on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive,